Guys, what's going on? And in today's video we're going to be talking about how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are set to interview Vikings defensive coordinator George Edwards Friday this week. We're going to be talking about all the ins and outs of it, how the Vikings defense has been doing since George Edwards became the defensive coordinator, and how this could possibly affect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's get into it. One thing that I do want to note first off is that George Edwards has been coaching for a long time. He has been a coach since 1991 when he started in Florida. That's just kind of cool in my opinion. And he's been a defensive coach for many teams such as the Bills, the Dolphins, the Vikings, among others. He's been all over the place, and generally everywhere he's gone, for the most part, things have gone pretty well for the defenses he's been a part of. Now, in terms of his overall specialty, in terms of positions, it's mainly defensive line and linebackers. Nothing I saw in terms of the research that I did pointed to anything he's done with secondaries, whether he was a secondaries coach or anything like that. He was a defensive lineman coach at one point. He was a linebackers coach at one point. So I'm going to assume that's what he specializes in. But don't let that take away from anything. While George Edwards has been defensive coordinator for most of the teams he's been a part of, their defenses have done a very good job. Speaking specifically on his most recent time with the Vikings, he's been there since 2014. They've had a really, really good defense, okay? Like, we can all kind of agree with that the Vikings have had one of the better defenses in the NFC for a really long time, and it kind of helped an overall turnaround for this Minnesota Vikings team. The year before George Edwards got there and became the full-time defensive coordinator, the Vikings only won 5 games. Since then, they have not won less than 8. That's a really big deal, okay? That's a big deal. Could you imagine if the Buccaneers had that kind of success and leadership, not as just an overall team, but as the defensive side of the ball as well? People would be partying in the streets. People would be going insane, and a big part of this Viking success has been thanks to George Edwards and his overall Viking defense. I know a lot of people have been clamoring for possibly a defensive-minded coach and, you know, offensive, defensive-minded coach, whatever it may be. I just want a good coach regardless. You know, a lot of Bucs fans have said, you know, it doesn't matter, offense, defense, you know, it is what it is. Just get a leader of men. I think George Edwards can be a leader of men. A lot of the players for a lot of the teams that he's been on have shown a very great deal of respect for what he's been able to do and the type of leadership he's been able to bring to the teams that he's been a part of. And I feel that type of leadership is sorely lacking here on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, you know, we always talk about culture change and, you know, lacking leadership and whatnot, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. George Edwards would probably help that out a lot. Turning around this defense was what made the Buccaneers win their Super Bowl back in 2002. And the linebackers and the defensive line, you know, that's a really big part. That's basically 2/3 of the defense right there. So having somebody come in who knows what to do with both those positions, they've worked with them before, and can bring that type of leadership and bring that type of attitude of what it's like to be a winner. I've said this before, bringing in a player who has a winning attitude is one thing. Bringing in a head coach who has a constant winning attitude and nothing less is an entirely different thing. It'll add a whole nother layer to this team, and I think it'll really prove to be a very important thing if the Buccaneers were to hire George Edwards as the head coach of this team. In terms of me thinking whether or not he's going to be hired or not, I honestly have no idea. We could be seeing a hire maybe 2 weeks down the line. That's usually kind of the average, you know, after maybe 2.5 weeks, we usually see a hire. It's interesting that they get this one in early. He's not the first candidate that the Buccaneers are going to be interviewing. That went to Eric Bieniemy, I believe either today or yesterday. But it is a good interview nonetheless. I think he's one of the top options on not just the Glazers list, but mine as well. I do want to see them maybe look at a guy like Vic Fangio with the Chicago Bears as well. But right now, I like George Edwards. I like what he's been able to do with the Minnesota Vikings defense, and I think you guys should be excited about this interview. Let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about George Edwards? What do you think he's been able to do with his Minnesota Vikings defenses? He basically has brought really good defense back to the Minnesota Vikings, and I really think he could do the same with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He kind of reminds me of an old schoolish type of defensive coordinator guy where, you know, if promoted, he's never had a chance to be a head coach before, so if promoted, I think he could do some really good things. Maybe not on the same level as Tony Dungy, but I will say that the last time the Buccaneers hired a Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator to be their head coach, it was Tony Dungy. So take that for what you will. Take that for what you will. But let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comment section below. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. George Edwards, I like the interview. I really hope that the Buccaneers do give him a very solid look. But anyway, guys, as always, I'll see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.